Have you been looking for a Taekwondo podcast with qualified people who know what they're talking about, who help you keep up with everything going on in the Taekwondo world? Well, you found it. This is the Taekwondo Podcast. Taekwondo news, competitions and other events, training and sports science, keeping the fans, coaches, and high-performance athletes up to date with the latest news and trends on Olympic Taekwondo. Let's do this. This is the Taekwondo Podcast. And now your hosts, Coach César Valentim and Peter Nessler.
Hello and welcome to the Taekwondo Podcast. We're a podcast based out of Austria, in English language, for everyone out there who likes Taekwondo. In this episode, we talk with the British coach Stephen Turner. Welcome to our podcast. I'm Coach César Valentim. This week I'm here with Coach Stephen Turner. Hi, Stephen. It's a great pleasure.
Hi, how you doing? All right?
Yeah, well, great. It's a great pleasure having you as a guest. Can you please tell us?
It's good to be here. It's always good to talk about Taekwondo, so I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's probably a bit weird to have you on the podcast. Most people don't know who you are. Well, those who are around for a while remember you as a player. I've seen you many times as a coach, quite active in social media sometimes. Can you please tell us a bit about yourself?
Okay, so for those that don't know who I am, my name is Stephen Turner. I'm 39 years young now, and I'm originally from a town called Coventry, which is in central England, but I now live in a small coastal town called Exmouth on the southwest. And Taekwondo isn't my full-time job, which is why a lot of people have, most recently have probably not seen much of me. I'm a sergeant in the Royal Marines, and I've been in the Royal Marines for 16 years now, so that's occupied a lot of my time. And I currently train Royal Marines recruits at the Commando Training Centre, which is also in the southwest. And I've actually been doing Taekwondo now since 1989, so I was 5, and that was originally with an ITF group. And then I transitioned in 1993 to a WTF club in my local town. I first fought internationally in 1994. So I was just 10 at the time. And then sort of fast forward a few years, I qualified for my first national team in 1998. That was the Junior World Championships in Istanbul, where I was lucky enough to win a bronze medal. I won a second bronze medal the following year at the Junior European Championships, and then made my first national team at the 2001 World Championships in Jeju. That didn't go quite so well. And I think despite winning, those 2 gold medals and quite a number of medals at some of the European Opens, like the Dutch, Belgium and Austrian as a senior, I never really experienced the same sort of success at senior level as I did as a junior. And for a lot of the same reasons that most people struggle in the senior ranks, that the standard is a lot higher, the expectation is more, the commitment is more. But the location for me was a big problem. There were no sport taekwondo clubs in my area, no high performance coaches. The financial situation hit me hard because I had no funding and I had to get a full-time job like many people had to back then. But also injuries and illnesses really affected me in a big way. And a lot of people probably don't know this about me and probably see me disappear at varying times. But in 2003, I ruptured my ACL. That was at the national championships. And shortly after that, I was actually diagnosed with testicular cancer. Now, I think you're probably the 5th person in the Taekwondo universe that I've ever told. So more people, no doubt, will know now. And that probably then shaped the rest of my sort of personal life, my professional life, and also my Taekwondo career. After what was a very serious injury with the ACL, and then the diagnosis of something as serious as a cancer, particularly at the age of just 20, I think my perspective on everything changed. And I did try to train a little bit after that. I tried to compete a little bit internationally, but certainly not with any real level of success. So at that point, I decided to get into coaching. And I first started coaching when I was 16. That was in my local town. with a guy called Richard Fairhurst. He's actually one of the Great Britain development coaches now, along with Romain Bailey and Jordan Gale. So some people will know who they are. And he came down to my local town to study at university. And like a lot of people did back then, they started clubs to generate income to fund their Taekwondo careers. So that's what we did, and he was in the Great Britain senior team at the time. I was still a junior. And we that's probably where I really cut my teeth, so to speak, as a coach. I learned my trade as a coach very much on the job, with no formal training, no guidance, no supervision. We were two young kids really, and through trial and error really, learned and taught ourselves, how to be coaches, and we did really very well. We trained a lot of national champions at sort of cadet, junior, and senior level. And then when he went back home after university, he started his Black Widow club, which he has now, and then got involved coaching with the national team. And then I continued to compete, or tried to compete, trying to balance now, being injured, having the illness, the logistic and financial constraints, and also then trying to coach as well, which was very difficult. So in around 2006, I made the decision to join the military. I was actually away with the national team at a training camp in Spain, and thought, you know what, this isn't going quite so well, and I'm going to do something different. So I joined the military, and that was an incredible adventure, and again really sort of changed my perspective on things, and changed the course of my life forever really. So in 2009, after sort of a period of training in the military, and sort of operational deployments, I then got involved back in coaching in a really big way, and started coaching a young man called Aaron Cook, who I'm sure many people listening to this will know who Aaron is, if they don't know him personally. And I don't know Aaron for a long time previous to this. We fought for the same clubs, and we travelled all over Europe together. And I'd coached him a lot as a child in the cadets, in the juniors. So he was working with the national team on a full-time basis. We've got a fantastic program here in the UK, based up in Manchester. And I used to travel from the south of England to Manchester on a weekend to train Aaron, and then would escort him to all his international events and coach him, generally when he wasn't with the national team, and sometimes when he was. And we had a great time. He those that obviously know who Aaron is, was a world number one, won a lot of medals at major championships as well. And we had a fantastic time. I had a break in that for a year when I went to Afghanistan in 2011. And then returned from Afghanistan in the run-up to the London Olympics. I actually took a break from the military, moved to Manchester, moved in with Aaron's family in his house in Manchester to train him on a full-time basis then in the preparation for London. Now, those people that were involved in Taekwondo will know that at the time he was a world number one, one of the favourites arguably for a medal at that competition, and was ultimately not selected. And I think that's really where we all went off in our separate ways. Aaron went off to compete for the Isle of Man, and then went to compete for Moldova, and then I took a step back from Taekwondo. I wasn't involved at that point in the day-to-day running of classes or clubs or training of athletes. I was always here, watching, listening, and learning as the sport was transforming into what it is today. But then just had a normal life. I was in the military and just got married, had kids, and became a normal dude, doing normal stuff for a while, up until about 2 years ago, where I got back involved in Taekwondo again with a local club. So a bit of a shout out to Dave Des Forges, who's the coach of South Hams Taekwondo, based in Plymouth in the southwest of England. He's a fantastic coach, trained lots of national champions himself, and some world championship medal winners at junior level. So right now, I'm working with him at club level, trying to assist in the development of his athletes. And I've recently started coaching again in more high performance Taekwondo with 2 junior athletes. One is in the Great Britain development squad at the moment, and we've got high aspirations for him. We're hoping for him to qualify at the European Championships this year. And he has a realistic expectation of a medal there. And then a young Filipino athlete that's moved over to the UK pre-COVID. He was a Filipino national champion as a cadet. And again, our aspiration for him is that he can qualify for the Filipino team in the next 12 months, and has genuine sort of major championship sort of medal prospects. So that's really from start to finish, a bit of a whirlwind, who I am, where I've been, and hopefully where I'm going.
Well, that is an amazing curriculum. I think none of our guests ever exposed so much of their life, special personal life. So now it's not only 5 people who know it. I'm pretty sure that on Tuesday when this podcast goes out, actually not this week, next week, a few hundred people more will know about it. Your life is very similar to mine. I joined the military also pretty young, and I had to suffer the same distancing from normal life when you're deployed and when you are in training, and for half a dozen years. For me, it was impossible to actually be an active athlete when you were in the military. It was forbidden. So me and some friends, I'm a good coach in Portugal, José Monteiro, we talk about it because it's from my generation. We're a little older than you, just half a dozen years. And at our time, if you were an active military, you were not allowed to do competition sports outside of the military, except for the recognized ones like fencing and shooting. And then we had sorry, is this your... Oh, come on. Sorry, let me pause a little bit. Who the hell is drilling on the weekend? Oh, man. Sorry, let me pause it.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know why someone is drilling on the weekend at night, but it happens.
They probably know there's a podcast, so
it's nobody rings at my door when I'm recording a podcast. They ring the wrong doorbell. Things like that happen. I put all my phones on silent to make sure that they interview at night when I'm from home, and that nobody bothers me. But these things happen. So I was saying when I was in the military, we were not allowed to do competition sports except shooting and fencing and swimming. And of course, I joined the military triathlon team, and I did running. I got a military gold medal in swimming, cool. Things like that. Yeah, because you're an athlete and you want to keep up with. And I would sometimes visit my club where before as a teenager or older, 16, 17 years old, was teaching, especially the kids classes, but I was never allowed to be much more involved. And as you know, you're only home for 1 or 2 days, and then you are out again, and it's not something you can do actually half time.
Yeah, we in the UK we are. Sport is definitely encouraged, and we have a sports association probably for everything in the UK Armed Forces, and it's really encouraged, yet everyone's so busy so can't really take part. For example, I've never done adventurous training in the 16 years I've been in the Royal Marines, yet we're mandated to do it every year. We do have a small Taekwondo team, but it's very much a novice team. It's run by a guy called John Harrison, who runs Wessex Taekwondo in the southwest or the south of England. Really good guy, but he's very limited with the time, the resources, and the people that he has, to train. They're generally at a novice level. So, and we don't also in the UK, we don't take part in the World Taekwondo Championships for the military or the games that they hold. It's not something that the UK Ministry of Defence have signed up to. So we very much compete in my organisation against the US Marines, for example. That's a really big thing. But generally speaking, people do practice sports, but there's a lot of people that do athletics and things like that. Dame Kelly Holmes, who won 2 Olympic gold medals, I think at 400 and 800 meters. She was in the army, but had to, if you really wanted to excel as an athlete, you had to leave the army in order to do that. And as you said, it's very difficult to be in the military, particularly if you're in a country where they have a very operationally focused armed forces, to do that, and also then find time to train and to eat healthily and to rest and to get away to do competitions. It's difficult.
Yeah, and you have to understand that when we are military people doing Taekwondo is not the same as the military games that we have right now. Because if you look at the International Council for Military Sports, and when they do the military world championships in Taekwondo, these are not military like you and I. These are people that they're athletes, professional athletes that get funding from their own national military, and maybe they have 6 weeks of basic training, and once a year they go for a week training camp together where they don't even learn how to salute or to march. They probably learn how to.
And I've actually got lots of friends, as I'm sure you have. In fact, a lot of the Taekwondo community seems to have been in the military at some point. You see pictures on social media in their annual picture in their ceremonial uniform. And then people say, "Oh, Stephen, you're in the military, aren't you?" Yeah, but it's a little bit different. And I actually have a very demanding job, and it takes every ounce of my being to so it is very difficult. But so I think that's probably when I knew, I think when I joined the military, that would probably, for the time that I was doing what I'm doing, particularly the organization that I joined, that I would probably not do so much Taekwondo, and it probably wasn't supposed to be for 16 years. So here I am, So luckily, I have as a sergeant now, I'm an instructor at a training centre. So although it's very demanding, I am able to coach. I'm able to get away. I'm able to do Taekwondo, but there's still a limit to that. I think if I wanted to do more than what I'm doing now, I would have to leave the military, which is an option. I think if a really good offer, was put on the table for the right money, I'd probably consider it. But until that happens, then I'll keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, but being a military is also about who you are, and not everybody can be a military. So I'm happy that people like you are in the military. Let's not go that way, because I don't want this podcast to be a competitive to soft rep podcast or a Grand Tam video YouTube channel. Let's focus on Taekwondo. What you mentioned before, that you were coaching Stephen Lopez before the London Olympics. Stephen Lopez, sorry, Aaron Cook before the Olympics. And I remember Aaron and how his results at the Beijing Olympics were basically sour. They were very unfair. Most of us believe that it was a poor referee call, and that was one of the reasons why I moved into electronics protective scoring systems, because the corner judges were definitely not as efficient as a computer. Even though the PSS has failures, it has failures for blue and red, not just for
certain
one of
athletes,
the sides.
from certain nations, maybe.
Exactly. And you got to work with Aaron right in the period after the Beijing Olympics and through all the controversy of the GB Taekwondo program. How was it for you to come from being an athlete and immediately, when you are a high performance coach, to work someone under that stress?
I think it was easier for me, because having competed at an elite level as a junior, having been in a national team as a senior, I had a very good understanding of Taekwondo from a technical and tactical perspective. I was aware of what was required in terms of training and the level of commitment outside of that, I think. But I knew Aaron from a very young age as well, so that made it much easier. And we already had a very good relationship, a very good understanding and respect for each other. And I'd coached him quite a number of times as well. So I think that it was, as I was coming to the end of my career, it was almost very organic and quite a natural transition for me. Now, most people generally, you still see it nowadays, where people finish competing and then they get a job with their national team, with varying levels of success. But I think for me, it was very unique because I was training 1-to-1 with an athlete. And that in Taekwondo is quite unique. It's the sort of thing you would normally find in mixed martial arts or boxing. So it wasn't like I was stepping into a national team and was the head coach of with 50 athletes to work with or 20 athletes. I had one athlete to work with, and ultimately I moved into his house. It was an incredible experience. Aaron is, as lots of people know, is a really good guy. He's exceptionally hardworking, highly motivated, really driven, and was exceptionally talented. And that always makes things easier because he wanted to learn. He always trained with a real passion, a real enthusiasm. And how he fought is how he trained. He almost had a fearless approach to everything that he did. And that's probably why he was so entertaining, and he left his heart and soul on the mat. And that is how he trained as well. And anyone that's ever trained with him, and still trains with him now, will know that. So I think that it was maybe a baptism by fire initially. It was, particularly because of the timing. Beijing had happened. He'd fought against Stephen Lopez in the year afterwards, which was a real big thing for him. And then it was sort of contesting again for sort of major championship medals almost immediately. And he was 17, 18 years old. He was still a boy, really. And I was a very young coach with limited experience of coaching at that level. So even myself, I was learning on the job, and learning through trial and error. but it was an amazing experience. And I think looking back, I think that were all the decisions that we made the right ones? I don't know, probably not. If we could go back and change anything, would we change things? Probably lots of things. But I think if I had all the teaching and coaching and mentoring experience that I've gained throughout my years in the military, and the command and leadership skills and experiences I have now, and also the life experience as well, would I do some things differently? And probably. But I think that looking back, I think that everything we did with the best interests at heart, and I think we didn't do too badly. He did quite well. So we can all look back quite fondly on a fantastic career. And not just me, everybody that was involved with Aaron at that time.
And I remember this was over 10 years ago, but in social media, we saw the pictures of a shed with like 3 bobs. And at the time, the electronic system already installed in one of the bobs, so you can actually kick. You were living with him, you were training with him. Most people don't know that, but the training center was actually on his backyard, right? You guys put up a shed with the equipment inside. Do you had other people that were supporting you? Do you had a multidisciplinary team, some to help you with strength and conditioning, nutrition, all these things?
So you're right. We, Aaron's dad, Nigel, built. It was quite a big shed, but it certainly wasn't, the size of the National Training Centre that he was used to in Manchester. But it was big enough for him to do individual training. I think it would be very difficult for two welterweights to spar in there. But so a lot of the time when we were doing Taekwondo training in the UK was focused on his individual skills and drills and things like that. And then he spent a lot of time with a guy called Mike Clegg, who was a strength and conditioning coach who formerly worked for Manchester United for a long time during the Alex Ferguson days. So he was very, very experienced. So Aaron spent a lot of time with him also. And then I think a lot of people ask me, what was it like? And Aaron went from an environment with the sort of within the world-class performance program in the UK, where they had a lot of funding, some fantastic facilities, and every need for an athlete was catered for. Whether that be Taekwondo coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, medical professionals, psychologists. And he went from that environment into an environment where he had nothing, and he had to then find people to do these things and fund it himself. And that was probably, during the whole project, probably the biggest challenge, because, he was exceptionally talented. And I'd like to think that he had a really good team of people around him that were really good in their fields that could assist and drive him to where he wanted to be. But, we were, like I said, we were all doing this for the first time. There's no training that you can, no training course you can go on to do what we did. It was challenging, but and we had to source all these professionals ourselves, and then Aaron had to pay for them. But it was it worked, and it was really good, and he had an incredible level of success, and won lots of medals. But yeah, the training in the shed in the back garden was a real thing.
All right, so we'll take a little break and we'll come back later and talk a little bit more Taekwondo.
Cool.
This podcast is supported by Hawken Dynamics. Hawken Dynamics believes that technology is most useful when it stays out of your way. That's why Hawken developed the world's first wireless force plate system with extreme usability. It is the quickest, easiest to use, and most robust solution on the market. It is trusted by all sports organizations large and small, as well as tactical, military, and rehabilitation environments around the globe. It's force testing in the palm of your hand. Here at Taekwondo Center, we use Hawken Dynamics to test and monitor our team. The cloud-based platform allows us to access data and publish a variety of reports on the go. My favorites are trend reports and, of course, weight reports, where I can monitor different metrics to view progress and identify performance indicators, or to compare weights to a baseline data range. I use it on a daily basis to identify readiness. A simple jumping test takes me less than a minute to assess the entire team. Having my own Hawken Dynamics force plates allows me to test reactive strengths, maximum strengths, rate of force development, asymmetry, and so much more. The real-time feedback on the app is useful not only for testing, but as a training tool, making it more accurate and at the same time more engaging for the athletes. If you are interested in learning more about Hawken Dynamics or getting your own, the team can be reached at info@hawkendynamics.com or on Instagram or Twitter @HawkenDynamics.
This podcast is sponsored by First Beat Sports. First Beat Sports combines the most comprehensive analytics in team sports with a customizable interface to support real-time monitoring, recovery monitoring, performance management, and much more. The result? Data-driven decisions that support your athletes and team training, recovery, and performance goals. First Beat Sports is trusted by professionals. Over 23,000 athletes representing over 1,000 teams around the world rely on the solution to train and plan with confidence on a team and individual level using HRV-based insights. For more information, please visit our website, firstbeat.com/sports.
You're listening to the Taekwondo Podcast. Now back to your hosts, Coach César Valentim and Peter Nessler.
So welcome back. I've been here talking with Stephen Turner. Stephen, modern Taekwondo is a very different thing from the old days. So this is the question that most people talk about in the social media is what do you think about modern training and how contemporary players are adapted to the new systems and their new rules?
Okay, this I don't know if this is the question that everyone wants to answer or doesn't want to answer, but I think it's definitely something that everyone involved in Taekwondo, whether they're involved with it now or have been involved certainly in the last 20 years, has got a very distinct opinion of. And it's often, like you say, talked about on social media or argued about. And I think that, Taekwondo has changed. I think, that has not been lost on anybody. And with the introduction of the electronics. And I think that, what a lot of people need to remember is that the electronics were first used, I believe, at the World Championships in Copenhagen in 2009. Well, that was 14 years ago. And, we have world champions now that are just 19 years of age. So all they've ever known is the new school. And, a lot of people talk about the old school versus the new school. And we've all listened to people, and talk about it, argue about it, and all the highlight reels from the matches from 1990 and things like that, and comparing it to what we see today. And I think that, once everyone gets beyond the fact that all sport evolves and things change, the introduction of VAR in football has revolutionized the way the game is refereed and judged, and the outcome of matches is no doubt different now because of that introduction, or the changes to the offside rule, or the fact that the ball doesn't always appear over the line but is over the line, and things like that, and the effects of that at the recent World Cup. So I think that Taekwondo is no different. Of course, there's been lots of changes, and I think when the rules change, and of course we've had a lot of rule changes. I think we've probably had four. The rules have been rewritten, I think, 4 times in the last year, or in the last 6 months, it seems. And as the rules change, it changes everything as the scoring system changes. And I think that everyone has to adapt. And we actually have a saying in the Royal Marines, and or more of a sort of a mantra. It sort of forms part of the commando mindset, and it is that we need to be the first to understand, the first to adapt and respond, and the first to overcome. And it's sort of a whole mindset that we have in our organisation. I think that probably suits the Taekwondo community really well, in that if we don't understand the rule changes, if we don't understand the significance of them and the so what for the game of Taekwondo, and if we don't fully understand the scoring systems, and then if we don't effectively adapt and respond to those changes, then people will unfortunately be left behind. And we've seen that, where certain teams or certain athletes have had an incredible level of success. There's been a change in the rules, and then that change has then meant that they've struggled to maintain the same level of success because it doesn't quite suit them. And probably from people within that community, they're probably saying, I don't like these changes. And of course, I don't think I would like it. But at the same time, those same changes have benefited somebody. And same with the scoring system. We've seen whole nations, struggle on certain systems. And I think that the key element for me is that understanding and that ability to adapt and then respond to change. And I think as a community, I think if you consider the transformation really that Taekwondo has been going through and is continuing to go through, I think as a community, certainly at elite level, I think that we've adapted quite well. And I think potentially, and I can only really talk about the UK now, at a domestic level, I would argue that our ability to adapt to change has probably been less successful, and I think that we have been so focused on the new rules and on the scoring systems, and have potentially, and people might shout at me now for saying this, but I think potentially because we've been so obsessed with how to play in the new rules, and of course the way the rules are interpreted, changes the way the game is played. It changes the way we execute our techniques. It changes the strategies. I think we've been so obsessed with that from what I've seen, certainly at a domestic level in the UK, there are a lot of athletes that are exceptional with the front leg. They're very good at kicking indirect with the front leg, but have a very poor back leg, and things like distance and timing and footwork and movement, which have all been core Taekwondo skills for such a long time. They're skills which, that all athletes need to possess, and everyone needs to have a really good understanding of those. I think certainly, at a domestic level in the UK, we're probably struggling in those areas. And I think that is definitely something that I've noticed.
When you look at the rules, you remember in 2005 the Americans were blocking with the knee, and then of course a few months later the rule was clarified that you should not block with the knee.
Yeah.
And we've seen recent rule changes in the last couple of years, specifically targeting techniques that some nations use more than others. I remember 2015 that people were actually counterplaying the Middle Eastern players that were using these monkey kicks and these clinch techniques. And later, after the Tokyo Olympics, about the kicking to the head on the clinch and all these things also have been enforced new rules to pretty much neutralize techniques that some players were using and some Olympic medalists were using, even though that's a little bit too much. When you say that, yes, the sport evolves and rules change and every sport has evolved. When we look at Taekwondo 2023, we look at Taekwondo 1988, it's a totally different sport.
I think, and you're right. I think it's almost like comparing the WT Taekwondo to ITF Taekwondo. They're both Taekwondo. We wear a similar uniform. We both kick and punch each other, but they're completely different. BJJ to judo. Brazilian jiu-jitsu to Japanese jiu-jitsu. There's lots of things that are similar, but actually now Taekwondo is a different sport to what it was, 15, 20 years ago, and it is literally completely different to what it was when, we fought in 12 by 12 meter rings, 3 rounds of 3 minutes, with chest guards made of bamboo shoots and no helmets, no matting, and I think that there are some things that endure. There are certain skill sets which are vital. And I think that, certainly, like I said, at an elite level, I think, you'll still see that the athletes can kick with both legs. They can kick to the body. They can kick to the head. They can attack and counter. They can kick at, from a clinch at close range, within the middle distance, at a long range. But I think, because they're competing at such a high level, they've got access to the world's best coaches and all the support staff. But I think probably as a community where we've suffered because of the changes, is that we are playing to a set of rules, and as the rules change, then we're changing. And who knows where Taekwondo is going to go next? I think, if you speak to most people, certainly on the international circuit now, people are a lot more positive now than maybe what they were 5 years ago, where the sport had changed and it got to a point where it probably wasn't quite as entertaining. I think we are starting to see, people throw double kicks, for example, which we didn't see a great deal of a few years ago. People are spinning a bit more now. The pace of the game has increased. So I think we're not in a particularly bad place now. I think, I really enjoy watching Taekwondo now. And I think maybe there was a time where probably, I didn't enjoy it as much. I think I'm probably not the only person that felt that way.
Yeah, for sure, myself included. But we were mentioning before, like at the domestic level, we'll find that a lot of the players don't have the resources. And it's something that is another coach that we interviewed a few months ago mentioned that the players need to have a lot of resources to adapt to the rules, because every time the rules change, they will have the resources to use it. And you see a lot of players that are very fast paced into the high performance. Some of them didn't even come from a Taekwondo background, and they just had probably the anthropometric skills measures to be a good player at certain weight divisions. And we know now that with the rules change, stepping, as you mentioned, kicking with the back leg, being able to do a spinning kick. It's way more important than it was a couple of years ago. So the rules changed to make sure that Taekwondo is more dynamic. So we all agree that the new rules definitely are going into the right direction. But you will see that changes will come again when the systems change. We'll have new PSS. The last episode we had Dido, the manager from Dido, explaining how the next electronic cards are gonna work. That the front leg and back leg will have different approaches and different thresholds of power for being able to score. So we'll have to have skills that you are able to attack and counterattack with the front leg, be able to do indirect or direct kicks with the front leg, but you also have to be very good with this back leg. You have to have very good displacements and make sure that you manage to move around your opponent and around the competition area and spin when you have to go get those extra points. So I think Taekwondo players that don't adapt, especially Taekwondo coaches that don't adapt to the fact that the new rules are mixing with the old Taekwondo style, will have a big problem. And that happens a lot. In every country, I can say that in Austria is the same. It took maybe 10 years for some of the old school coaches to adapt to using the front leg. And it will take probably 3 or 4 or 5 years for the new coaches to learn how to use the back leg.
Yeah, I think the advantage maybe that we have now is that there aren't many of coaches that are certainly competing at an elite level that were doing it 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And, we are seeing, coaches get younger. A lot of ex-athletes are now being employed by national teams. So there are a lot of coaches that are from the new school, so to speak, the so-called new school. And I think that hopefully their ability to be able to adapt to change it will be greater than maybe what it was in previous generations, where Taekwondo was very much the same sort of sport, whereas the level of transformation has been so quick in recent years. And I think if we were from another sport looking in, you can have sympathy maybe for people in the sport, because it has changed so much. And like you say, certainly at a club level, if you're a club that's very small and doesn't have the finances and the resources to buy electronic chess cards, yet at national championships, or once your athletes progress onto an international, to an international level, that they're going to have to use them. Well, they may have never used them before or seen them, other than on the internet. And I think that is a big challenge. And then if the systems continue to change, so it would be good if WT could agree a set of rules, and we could go 12 months, maybe 18 months, 2 years with no changes, or if we could agree on a system where that system was used, or it was the systems worked more similar, because they are different. And right now, if you want to make a real success, you've got to be effective on the KPMP, you've got to be effective on the Dado. But if the Dado is going to change, then we're starting again in many ways and going through this process. So it is difficult. And I think certainly, which is why I've always been such an advocate of having a basics done well approach, and making sure our core Taekwondo skills are really very good. So right from the start, and certainly at a club level, and this is probably something that I really enforce with the club athletes that I'm working with now, that things like their preparation before they kick, their execution of their techniques, their cover and their recovery and things like that are all really sound, and that they're able to kick with both legs. They can execute all the various types of techniques. So then if at least they've got that, and they can kick with the front leg, the back leg, they can transition their weight forward and backwards. They are able then to adapt more easily should they have to compete on KPMP, or should they have to compete on Dado, or if the systems change or the rules change. And I think that's certainly at club level would be my focus, and certainly something that I'm an advocate for, and pushing quite hard at club level, that that basics done well approach hopefully will allow coaches and athletes to transition through the changes more easily. And hopefully the changes will only be minor as well in the future. And who knows, what WT are going to do next, and what direction they're going to take it. But it's definitely exciting, if not very, very challenging at all levels.
Well, when to be fair, KPNP, even though the system looks pretty much the same, and the new version is actually just a firmware upgrade from the older version, it also changed. The KPNP that we have competing right now, helmets especially, and the vests, they are different they're a little different from the ones that were released back in the 8 years ago. So the people have to adapt to them. But again, I mentioned this several times in several episodes. When people ask me, why do you have so much equipment? I said, well, how can you be a swimming coach without water? If you don't invest in having a set of vests secondhand, you can get them secondhand. They will still work. For you to have an idea, I did a mini camp in the vacations time now before Christmas with my kids, and it was focused on really collar belt kids and teenagers. And my black belts came and watched one of the training and said, how can the 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds be so good at kicking at the vest? It's because they learn it. I have the generation 1, the old 10-year-old vests laying around, turn them on, put the socks on the kids, and they will learn, wait, if I kick like this, I get better point. If I don't put the foot like this, I will not be able to score. So they learn by trial and error, because that's what they have to do. That's how everyone learns, especially in the early stages,
And we know it's so different, rather kicking kicking target and kicking a body, and executing any technique against a static target where the distance is perfect, the timing is perfect. You're kicking. It's a deliberate action when you want to kick, and when you change those things and you have to react, and the distance changes, and the length of the kick has to change, and even just the feeling of kicking the body is so different. Like you say, it wouldn't happen in other sports where boxers don't train without sparring. And it's a similar sort of scenario. So unfortunately, they are fairly expensive. But like you say, if people can get hold of a second-hand set, or can get together with other clubs that do have them. And I think people are starting to do a lot of that more nowadays. I think that is certainly in the UK, clubs are working together a lot more. And there are a few clubs that have quite a lot of equipment and are quite fortunate. And we are having more test match days and group sessions, and clubs are getting together to combine resources. And I think these are the sort of things people have to do, because I think, like we said, if you don't do that, then you are going to really struggle, because you're not doing Taekwondo unless you've got your chest guards on, your helmets on, you're playing to the new rules.
Exactly. I had my equipment always traveling. I think my equipment made more kilometers and flew more miles than many players out there, and because people keep borrowing them. The same way I invite other coaches to come. Please bring your equipment, or maybe I don't have KPNP this size. Can you bring a couple of vests? Or you don't have the Dedo this size? Take mine. That kind of sharing is important, but it usually happens with the high performance clubs. Like my vests and my electronic equipment traveled to Portugal, to Spain, to Serbia, to Croatia, to Slovenia. But funny enough, they never traveled to 2 streets down to the next club.
Yeah,
because at the local level, the clubs are barely working together. Yes, there are clubs in Austria I work with. There are also clubs in Vienna that work with me, and we use the equipment, but there's too little. And when I look at my country here where I live right now, also where I come from, there is no national team training center. There is no national team program. In UK, it's a little different. UK, you guys have GB Taekwondo, and then you have the federation clubs. And I think there is important for most people to understand, the people that don't understand the British reality. GB Taekwondo, the players that we see competing for the national team, they're not the players we see in the local competitions. It's a total different universe. And at the club level, and I've been to local competitions in the UK, and I've met a lot of British clubs traveling abroad. There are some good names out there. There's not going to say all of them, otherwise the ones I don't mention
get that's always the problem when you start naming people.
Yeah, but I have a lot of friends in UK, and they travel abroad, and we get to train together. I've been to their competitions in UK, so I've seen how they work. And there's a big difference between what the GB program is and what the club level is doing. And what do you think is the issue over there, without getting too much into administration? But what do the club coaches need to have and need to do to start having a high performance?
I think it's probably quite easy on the surface, but probably not easy to execute. But I think, as you quite rightly said, we've got GB Taekwondo that's sat at the top, and they are responsible for high performance Taekwondo in Great Britain, and all of the funding that comes from the national lottery, and it's a really good thing, not just in Taekwondo but across all sports in the UK. The lottery funding that enables us to be able to compete with the rest of the world at a high level. And we do have a fantastic centre. They've got a really good setup there. Some of my athletes are a part of that, and they've got some fantastic resources, some really good staff, some really good coaches, and they cater for all the needs of a professional athlete that wants to compete at a high level. And they're doing a fantastic job. But I think that what we don't have and what they don't have is a large number of people supplying them with players. And you mentioned it earlier on about kickboxers and other people, moving into Taekwondo, and we have a scheme like that as well, because for lots of reasons, but also, in fact, one of my athletes that I work with is a kickboxer that's gone through a talent ID program. And is now part of the Great Britain Development Squad. So for us, we have our world-class performance program at the top, and that's got approximately 25 athletes, and they train full-time in the academy in Manchester. And then sat below that, we have a GB development program. So that's within the under the GB umbrella, and that's for 13-year-olds to 18-year-olds, and the purpose of that is for them to identify athletes, young athletes with the potential to maybe one time graduate at some point in the future, graduate for the world-class performance program. And it is a successful program, and they generally select teams, or they do select teams for our junior Europeans and junior world championships. And then the GB setup then is responsible for the Olympic Games, the World Championships, and the European Championships at senior level. And they are doing a great job. But like you say, then you have the national federation programs that sit below that, and significantly separate to that. So British Taekwondo, which is the national governing body or the member national association of the WTF in the UK, they have what they now call the British Taekwondo Sports Performance Department. And other than selecting teams for the under-21s and for the cadets, so the GB Taekwondo do not do that. It's just for the juniors and seniors. But the federation select teams for the under-21s and cadets, and they hold regular training sessions. And they're actually at the National Training Centre in Manchester, so they use that facility. But it is a separate group, and they hold training sessions every 4 to 6 weeks. So again, I've got some athletes that are part of that, and there are some great coaches involved with that, but they don't have the funding, they don't have the resources, they certainly don't have the manpower and the staff that they have at GB Taekwondo. What they have got is a group of incredibly enthusiastic and some experienced club coaches. And there's some really good guys. These guys have got are experienced, and they've got good clubs and good athletes in their own right, and many of them are active on the international circuit, and they've probably got a much larger group of athletes to work with, probably in the region of 100, and they meet once a month or twice, once every 6 weeks. But below that, there's nothing. There's just the club taekwondo, and like we spoke about before, in the UK we don't have a large WT Taekwondo community. It's approximately 18,000, 20,000 in the National Federation. And compared to some other nations, that's not a massive number. And from that, a very small amount of that number are actually practicing sport Taekwondo. I think the vast majority and this is probably the same in a lot of countries, they're what I would describe as generalist Taekwondo clubs. They do a little bit of self-defense, a little bit of the traditional side of things in the Pumse, and then a little bit of sport Taekwondo. And that the overwhelming majority of British Taekwondo probably fits that description. We've got a small amount of clubs that focus just on the Pumse side of things and competing in that, a small group of clubs that focus towards sport Taekwondo, and then a very, very small group of clubs that focus entirely on sport Taekwondo. But that number is very, very small. And I think that when you go to a national championships, and I can't think of the top of my head how many there were at the national championships in the last year, so I won't say just in case someone shouts at me, but it certainly wasn't the thousands that we've seen in Spain and in Turkey and in Mexico and places like that. And I think that, that is an issue in the UK. I know it's an issue in lots of other countries. If you don't have the level of participation, and if you don't have the resources at all levels. And it is difficult. And I think that's why the talent draft and the Fighting Chance initiative, which people like Taylor Mohammed, Jay Jones, Damon Sampson, Lauren Williams have come through. They're people that have come from other martial arts or other styles of Taekwondo where they've been identified as having good skills and a good level of experience and the potential to transition into WT Taekwondo. I think without something like that, I think we would really struggle in the UK. So there is a lot that can be done. I think for me, I think I would like to see a better development pathway for athletes in the UK, because I don't think we have that. I think we have some really good initiatives like the Fighting Chance, the talent draft, and the Great Britain Development Programme, and they're doing some great work. But I think if you have a 5-year-old walk through your door, day one, week one, having never done Taekwondo, there is not a very clear pathway for them to get to the top of the podium at Olympic Games in 15, 20 years' time. And I think that is lacking. I think the British Taekwondo needs to be working with GB Taekwondo more. I think that those different initiatives, those different programs need to feed into each other better. So there's a definitive start standard and end standard for each level within that pyramid. So everybody knows, where they're going, what they're doing, what they have to achieve, and everyone's working with each other, together to guide these athletes through that development pathway. From being a novice to being an elite athlete, and I'm sure there's people listening to this saying, yeah, we could do that in our country as well. But you need lots of time, resources, expertise, funding. But I think we're almost there in the UK. It's just it's very disjointed, and that is something that I would like to see improve in the future. I know that British Taekwondo, GB Taekwondo are working to try to make things better.
So as you mentioned, the pathway starts at the club level, and you also mentioned that there's only a few of the clubs doing sports Taekwondo, mostly being the generalistic martial arts kind of school. That most of these things around the world has to do with the fact that those clubs are non-professional, and the trainers have probably a rented location or even their own location, but only an after-hours program, and they're not fully motivated to invest in sports Taekwondo. As we know, is not as profitable as martial arts style or child occupational time kind of Taekwondo schools. And the reason why it's not so profitable most of the times is because there is no funding. And do you think that the problem with that is that there is no time or no investment, personal reasons for the coaches to invest in sport Taekwondo, or is also a problem from funding is being less accessible? And is the funding less accessible because there's a national team program?
I think that there are certain local community funds which clubs can access, and there are, and certainly at a local level or regional level all over the United Kingdom. But I think that it's not the millions of pounds that the GB academy gets, and it is in the region of £2 million, I believe, per year over an Olympic cycle, and that's an incredible amount of money for a program that has less than 30 athletes. And I think that as a national federation, we have our memberships, and again, I'm not privy to all of their funding streams, but it's very minimal. And I think so if the clubs can't generate the income themselves, if they are professional clubs or through local grants from charitable organisations, things like that, it is very difficult. And I think one of the things that I think we really struggle with in the UK as well, beyond the need to professionalize things and have centres and have equipment and have people dedicated to sport Taekwondo, or really just driving the sport forward in a big way, is that we don't have in the UK a coach development programme or a coach development pathway either. And I don't know what it's like in Austria or in other parts of Europe, but we have currently a assistant coach award. And that is an online course followed by a small period, like a mentoring program. And all that's designed to do is train someone who has no experience of coaching in any way to plan and execute a small part of a training session, or maybe a whole training session under the supervision of a lead instructor. And that's all we have. And it's fairly new. And we had things in the past and they no longer exist. But right now, that is all we'd have as a federation. And I know British Taekwondo are working on a club coach award, and also beyond that, an advanced coach award. But right now, they don't exist. And I think that if we as in the UK, and I know the GB Taekwondo, their aspiration is to be the best team in the world. And for me, and I know a lot about the program. I know that is absolutely achievable. They've got some brilliant staff up there, some amazing athletes, and they've genuinely got the potential to get even better results than they have now. And they are doing everything they can to achieve that. But that is not going to be sustainable forever if we don't have the participation in the UK, if we're not investing in a genuine athlete development program, but also a coach development program. And it's not just training people to deliver some kicking drills. It can't stop there. There has to be a genuine, incredible coach development pathway so that, we can train coaches to a higher standard, they can gain experience, and they can train the future champions of the future. And I think, that has to happen if we are serious about developing Taekwondo in the UK at any level. But without supplying the world-class performance program up in Manchester with athletes, we're gonna struggle long term if we don't really invest at grassroots level as well.
It's interesting to hear that, because one of the biggest resources for coaches available out there is the Science for Sports Academy. It's a UK-based organization, Science for Sports. They have their podcast, they have courses and a lot of information for coaches. Of course, not sport specific, but most countries, as you asked, they do have academies, national trainer academies. Some countries are mandatory. For example, in Portugal, if you don't have a national trainer academy certification, that is done in partnership with universities, you are not even allowed to run your own local club. You have Spain that has their national federations, national trainer program. Germany has the same. Austria has one that is run in parts by the federation on sport specifics, and everything else on the National Trainer Academy. And I think that's where the resources being there is not enough motivation for the clubs to take in the courses. And for example, in Austria, even though we have 4 different levels, basically the instructor level, it's done on federation level. Then you have an instructor level that is 50-50 between the National Trainer Academy and the National Federation. Then you have to go through a basic trainer course as 1 semester program that's exclusively done by the National Trainer Academy, no federations involved. And then you have a 4th level that is maybe 10% or 20% from the National Trainer Academy, and the rest is being sport specific. And to be honest, only the first 2 have the majority of the Taekwondo coaches. The higher levels, there is even a 5th level that is almost unachievable. Only 3 people have done it in the history of Taekwondo. But the higher level, so national trainer certification, is not achieved by almost anyone. I can see that, for example, from the 100 Taekwondo schools we have in Vienna, 30 of them in the federation, maybe 3 or 4 people have this degree. And that's motivation to have the degree. In Taekwondo, it's easy. People love certificates. That's easy. That should be one motivation. But the fact that people don't have the time to invest or don't want to invest in education will also harm the fact that the athletes will not have a steady pathway. If they're entry level, the club level is not already plugged into the pipeway, because it's the pathway has to be from quality from the beginning. Because can you imagine if you spent 3 or 4 years in an ITF club? Can you imagine 3 or 4 years before in the WT club, how much time we would have saved?
Yes. Yeah, maybe if I'd gone from that ITF club right to modern day Taekwondo, I may have done better. But unfortunately, there was a period of 20 years between that, and where the game was very different. But yeah, I think that I'm a massive advocate of education anyway, and being in the military as well, where we plan for everything, and there's a course of action for a course of action for a course of action, and everything is meticulously planned and executed. I think that in order, for example, I train Royal Marines recruits, but the amount of training courses I've had to do to be able to do that, as well, I've gained years and years of experience, operational experience, and a whole variety, and we are into the years worth of courses, full-time courses, to be able to do my job before I'm allowed anywhere near a student, and we just don't have that in sport in general, but certainly not in Taekwondo. And I think with the best will in the world, I think British Taekwondo are working on it. But I think we need to work on it quickly. And I think that, if we click our fingers and we have, a series of courses, it's going to take a generation of coaches to go through that, to gain experience, to gain a level of competence, and to learn their trade, in order to consistently and in large numbers train, lots of champions of the future. And I think that is a massive challenge if you don't have the participation, if you don't have the investment, and also the will of the community as well. Because I think for a long time in British Taekwondo that we've had nothing. And their mindset, I think, probably does need to change a little bit in some areas that, that there may be, and again, this might not be a very popular opinion, but there may be people that think, well, I've been doing this for 30 years. Why should I have to do a course to train me to do what I've already been doing successfully? And I think, and I guess that, I understand part of that, but I think there is an attitude of that. And I think, right now, the course we have in British Taekwondo isn't even compulsory. So, people are coaching Taekwondo, and they have been doing for a long time with no formal training of any description, and that is not a good thing, and it definitely needs to change. And I think if it wasn't for, we're very, very lucky in Great Britain that our world-class performance program is incredibly well funded, and they've got some amazing facilities and a whole variety of support staff that are, top of their game, top of their trades, to support the athletes that we do have. And the talent draft and, the fighting chance scheme that we've had that's brought people in from ITF, from kickboxing, from karate, as we're very fortunate that we have that, because without this and without that development program that's almost bringing people in sideways, halfway up, that pathway, we would be really struggling for athletes in the UK, because we're just not developing them. And it's no fault of any individual or club or even the federation or anyone in it right now. But I think that as a community now, we need to do as much as we can to invest time, effort, and energy into developing, the next generation of coaches who can develop the next generation of athletes. And I think,
as you mentioned, no plan survives first contact, right? So what we had outlined for this podcast went way beyond what was the original plan. And I have to thank you, Stephen, for your opinion and for your insights in Taekwondo and modern Taekwondo and British Taekwondo overall.
That's brilliant. Yeah, it's been great to be here as well, and hopefully the people listening have enjoyed, listening to the things we've been speaking about. And it's an absolute pleasure. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Stephen. It was a pleasure being here with you and with everyone who is listening. This was a Taekwondo podcast. If you haven't already, listen to our other episodes that are available wherever you listen to your podcasts. We are releasing new episodes every Tuesday. Stay tuned, subscribe to the podcast, leave us a positive review, and share it with your friends. See you next time.
You've been listening to the Taekwondo podcast, keeping the fans, coaches, and high-performance athletes up to date with the latest news and trends on Olympic Taekwondo. Your host, Coach César Valentim, has almost 20 years of experience with high-performance Taekwondo and has worked all around the world as a Taekwondo trainer. Peter Nessler has been teaching Taekwondo for more than 20 years, and he's currently one of the top referees in Europe. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Instagram at Taekwondo Podcast, on Facebook at Taekwondo Cast, and the website taekwondopodcast.com. See you next time.